Welcome today to our Radius webinar. Today we are going to be hearing all about advanced analytics and how advanced analytics can be used to heighten your research insights, heighten your results, broaden your learnings. We're going to hear more and more about that from our experts today. We have Michael Patterson with us, and we have Jay Bigler from USAA who will be joining us. I will be moderating a conversation with these gentlemen to understand how advanced analytics is used, when it's used, why it's used, what it really brings to the table, and really help you understand some opportunities that maybe you're missing out on in terms of incorporating advanced analytics and studies that could indeed benefit from them. So with that, I'd like to have folks introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. As for myself, my name is Barry Weinhausen, Director of Qualitative Research here at Radius. I've been with the company for a shocking 27 years. And when I'm not moderating or leading some sort of qual expedition, I like to spend time with my dogs and on the beach. And I'd love to hear, I'm in South Florida, so hence the beach being a natural outlet. Love to start with you, Mike, to hear from you, and then we'll throw it over to Jay, and then we'll get started with our conversation.
Sure, thanks, Barry. Mike Patterson, glad to join you guys this afternoon. I'm Director of Research Analytics here at Radius, and I get involved in a lot of different studies. I work and consult with clients. I also do head up our innovation space. And then I also have the opportunity to do lunch and learns and webinars with Radius. So we're hoping you'll enjoy this session.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, Jay.
Hello, Barry. Yeah, I'm Jay Bigler with USAA, and I'm a lead research consultant for them. I joined USAA about 5 years ago and initially focused on more enterprise level projects. And then the past couple of years, I've segued over to the banking space, and I'm currently doing marketing research for the bank business, and do things like manage the brand tracker programs and you know, a number of other things that we'll get into here a bit later.
Perfect. And right before we dive in, just a couple housekeeping items for the folks who are listening in. I do believe you all know that this is being recorded. We will have an opportunity for you all to share questions. Please, as you're listening to the conversation that will start just momentarily, please go ahead, send questions into the chat. And as we wrap up, we will do our best to address as many of those as we can. Our conversation today with Mike and Jay should be about 30 minutes of our time, and then we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A as we see them come in. So to get us started, Jay, if you would, tell me about the research that you tend to conduct. Kind of what kind of projects do you work on?
Yeah, we, you know, as you might expect, it's a full marketing research function, so we're not like pigeonholed into any particular aspect of marketing research, but our projects span the complete scope of what I would refer to as the classical marketing mix. So the 4 P's of marketing: price, promotion, product, and place. So we do a lot of research, you know, in the way of product and concept testing, a little bit in pricing, a little bit in channel or place, and then quite a bit in the promotional space. Our research function is housed within the marketing and brand management org structure of you know, of USAA, and so a lot of our work focuses on marketing tactics and marketing brand, you know, advertising campaigns and that sort of thing. So we do a lot of that type of research, and then we also do a good deal of strategic research, you know, which provides supports the overall strategies, marketing strategies, and business strategies. So, for example, the brand tracking research I mentioned would fall within the strategic domain, as would segmentation research that we recently completed, and you know, some customer journey things like that.
Fantastic. And do you have a sense of, like, whether it's the percent or the proportion of studies that you do work on that involve some sort of advanced analytic component?
Yeah, you know, it varies kind of quarter to quarter, year to year, but I'd say probably a little over half, Barry, involve advanced analytics.
All right, I'm definitely going to hit you back up to understand kind of the why. I mean, that's certainly a lot of advanced analytics that you're incorporating, and I'm going to want to dig into that. But before we do, Mike, you're in a somewhat different role. You're on the supplier side. So I'd like to hear a little bit from you about, we're talking about advanced analytics. What are they? How do they work?
Yeah, good question, Barry. So really, in a nutshell, advanced analytics, I think of them as being kind of sophisticated techniques where we're able to look at the relationship between two or more variables. So for example, imagine that we want to understand how important different factors are when individuals are trying to consider or choose a credit card. You know, we could simply ask them to rate the importance of those different factors using like a 1 to 7 scale of importance. But, you know, if we did that, what we would likely find is that they rate all of those factors being the same. So if we're testing things like the brand of the credit card, the annual percentage rate, you know, the rewards that they might get for using the card, chances are, because all of those things are important, we're really not going to find much differentiation between those items. And so instead, what we could do is use advanced analytics, like a technique such as, say, driver analysis, to measure how much impact the different factors had on individuals' willingness to adopt a particular credit card. And if we were to do that, I suspect what we would find is much better differentiation and really, frankly, just better results.
Right, so you can really see what's rising to the top. Tell me a little bit about the types of projects that you tend to work on. Like as Jay said, you know, about half of his projects do incorporate some kind of advanced analytics. Give me a sense of the kinds of things that you see a good fit for advanced analytics.
Yeah, we really have a wide range of projects that I get involved in here at Radius. So I'd mentioned key driver analysis, and that really involves a variety of different regression or regression-like approaches. I also get involved in segmentation studies, and segmentation studies allow us to use different clustering techniques to group together individuals that are similar in terms of, say, their needs or their attitudes or their behaviors. So we're able to find individuals that all are somewhat similar. Also get involved in a lot of choice models. And choice models are approaches that allow us to understand the importance of different features, including brand and price, when individuals are evaluating different products or services and trying to choose amongst the different offers. And so we're able to understand kind of what that decision process is. And then we can use the results to provide our clients with guidance so that they are really able to design those products and services to maximize adoption or maximize the revenues that they get. And then the final technique I think that I get involved in a lot is called MaxDiff, which is again, like a trade-off technique that allows us to understand the relative or the absolute importance of different features. So for example, going back to that credit card example, we could conduct a MaxDiff study to understand how important those different factors were when individuals are considering a credit card.
Perfect, thank you. And just kind of to round out our basic understanding, or our start point to understanding around advanced analytics, under what kinds of circumstances do you tend to recommend and or involve some sort of AA?
Yeah, so it's really when we're needing to get deeper insights into data than we might be able to get simply by asking more relatively straightforward questions. So in other words, advanced analytics really allows us to explore data to a much greater extent and derive those insights that you simply can't get using simpler descriptive statistics.
Perfect. And now I want Jay, coming from your perspective on the client side, tell me why you do like to use advanced analytics in your studies. What does it bring to the table for you?
Yeah, well, Mike just took all my talking points. No, just kidding. Yeah, we be a bit redundant. Yeah. Now, just personally, I prefer, if you can answer your research objectives with just good old straight descriptive statistics, and I prefer that because it's just easier to digest and obviously costs less and kind of more clearly can be more clearly communicated. But often that's not the case. So particularly when you got a lot of variables involved in your questionnaire, and you want to solve for something that is not just readily available from the straightforward descriptive analysis from the research. So as Mike said, it's fundamentally you're using advanced analytics to look for relationships or patterns in a range of variables that you'll have in your data set, but you're doing that to solve for something. So for example, key driver analysis, you may have a study where you have 15 or 20 brand attributes, and you want to determine what brand attributes are most important in driving brand consideration. Well, you can ask stated importance, but chances are every one of those is going to be stated as extremely important. That gets you no good, and you can't really rank effectively 15 or 20 items. So often we'll use, and I'm sure the audience is quite familiar with this, but derived importance, and derived importance calls for the use of some sort of advanced analytic technique. As Mike said, there's numerous ways to solve for derived importance, whether it's ordinary least squares regression or just simple correlation analysis. There's nothing wrong with that if that gets you to where you need to be. But there are also some additional techniques that are worth trying. If there's high multicollinearity in your independent variables, then things like ridge or lasso regression can be used to help mitigate that impact of multicollinearity. And then there's also Bayes analysis. But basically the fundamental, and we'll get into some more of that later, but basically the fundamental reason you use advanced analytics is to explore and solve for marketing questions that involve a large range of variables.
Perfect. Mike, anything to add to that in terms of the reasons one might want to use advanced analytics?
Yeah, I think, just kind of adding to what Jay was just saying, I think, really because advanced analytics are these kind of powerful tools, it really allows us to probe our data, to look for relationships and explore in depth so that we're trying to maximize the value that we get from the data that we're collecting.
Great, perfect. So what about in terms of advanced analytics, what does it provide that you don't get on studies where it's not utilized? I keep hearing, it allows us to see more. What does it allow you to see? What are the key benefits? What does it bring? Jay?
Yeah, well, I think, take choice analytics. So discrete choice or, max diff is a choice technique. There's no way to tackle, when you've got, like take a discrete choice application where you're trying to design like an ideal product. There's no way to have a respondent address, all the combinations of product scenarios just in a descriptive fashion. So in that case, you need to set up an experimental design that shows subsets of those combinations. But the under the hood of all that is discrete choice modeling and hierarchical Bayesian modeling that gets you to where you need to be with that. It's, they're incomplete block designs basically. And, that's the case with max diff and with, conjoint or discrete choice. So that would be one reason you would need to use an advanced analytic technique, because you simply can't get there with just a straightforward questionnaire. And then segmentation, which, I can get to and explain how we use that later, but used advanced analytics for our segmentation work. But, when you have a post hoc segmentation based, attitudes and behaviors, you can't get a solution unless you employ some sort of what I call an advanced analytic algorithm to help you develop that solution to that.
Perfect. And Mike, tell me a little bit more about some of the benefits that you've seen across the board.
Yeah. So I think one of the real key benefits is that when we use advanced analytics, it allows us to better test hypotheses that we might have concerning either a market or data. So for example, Jay just mentioned segmentation. So we might hypothesize that there are different groups of consumers in a market. And so we can use advanced analytics, different types of clustering techniques and approaches to determine both, which groups exist in that market and then understand how they differ from one another. So this allows us to confirm, do these groups exist? And if they do, what do they look like? And so we can either confirm or sort of refine those hypotheses that we have using advanced analytics.
Right. And the other side of the coin, Jay, what are some of the watch outs when using advanced analytics? What are some of the things that you keep an eye out for, that you look out for?
Yeah, there's you always got to be watchful. That's for sure. Well, I guess the first thing is personally, I hate black box techniques, and you'll have suppliers that will engage with you that offer kind of the latest and greatest, but aren't real transparent about what's kind of under the hood on that technique, and that's not going to do you any good, in my opinion. You need to understand the technique and have a supplier that will explain that to you and explain how the algorithm works and the pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's an important watch out. And so you also need to have a supplier. A lot of times, particularly with large research suppliers, they'll sell in with their A team, and then when you get to project execution, get the B team, and the B team really doesn't understand a lot of the time the analytics behind what they're delivering. So you need a good research partner that understands, is going to take the time, is not concerned about spending the time with you for Q&A and taking the time it needs to explain the different techniques and the different options that you can bring to the table. And then beyond that, if you get the results, the watch outs are you need to make sure that you can take the insights delivered from that technique and transform those into a story that you can deliver to your stakeholders, internal stakeholders that are not, researchers, and they don't care really about the technique, particularly. Some do, but generally speaking, they don't, because that's not what their job is. So they're interested in, how does this solve my marketing problem or my business question? And so basically, you got to, make sure that the deliverables on the analytic techniques are communicated in a way that that clear. These are the insights that address the marketing question. Now, you're always going to get somebody in your audience, not always, but almost always, that is a bit more analytical and or just a bit of contrarian, and they're going to pop up and ask, "How'd you get there? What are you showing me? This kind of looks funny. How did you get from A to B?" So you got to be prepared. And so I always encourage the research folks to do their homework and anticipate that question and make sure they can answer that, because what they want to do is say, "I don't know, I'll get back to you," because it kind of hurts your credibility.
Got it, for sure. Mike, what do you have to add? What do you watch out for? What do you look out for?
Yeah, so because these are really sophisticated techniques, there are assumptions and stipulations that underlie the type of data that you have. So you really have to have a good understanding of the assumptions that underlie the techniques, and then know how to also address different issues that are going to arise. Otherwise, what you're going to end up with are erroneous results. So to me, the big watch out is really make sure that the vendor, the statistician, the data scientist that you're working with, really has the skill set and the knowledge in order to use and conduct these types of analyses. Because really, there's software out there today that allows pretty much anyone to run different types of advanced analytics. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can get yourself into some real trouble. So, you might estimate a model and get results out that really are just not accurate, and that could lead you in the wrong direction. I guess the other thing I would add is these advanced analytic techniques generally require larger sample sizes, which can then increase the cost. And because of the complexity of the analyses, can also add or expand the timeline. So basically, because of the complexity and the time involved in running the analyses, the analytics themselves can increase the cost of the project and just expand the timeline.
Perfect. Jay, why don't you share with us some recent studies where you did commission advanced analytics? I kind of just want to understand big picture, broad brushstrokes in terms of what were some of the study topics, what was it that you were trying to learn, what was the approach that you took in your research, and why you chose to include advanced analytics and what it delivered. Kind of give us a little mini case study, if you will.
Yeah, happy to do that. I've got a few examples here I can kind of quickly go through for you. One thing I'll interject is, these advanced analytic techniques, they do involve both judgment and, the science, if you want to call it, behind the actual algorithms. So, that's why you need to bring your research skills to the table that bear judgment upon, the data and the results from these advanced analytic techniques. So I just want to kind of drive that point home. But we've used advanced analytics quite a bit. Well, in particular, MaxDiff quite a bit for prioritization of items. Now, those items may be product features and benefits. They may be advertising messages. They may be a long list of names or taglines that you're trying to evaluate. And so, again, MaxDiff is kind of falls within that choice methodology and experimental design methodology. But MaxDiff, and I'm sure everybody in the audience has used MaxDiff, and we kind of take it for granted, or but there are some watch-outs for that too. I've seen some cases where the items you include in your MaxDiff set are really not apples to apples, and because everything is evaluated relative to one another in the item set. If you got 15 or 20 items in a MaxDiff exercise, or sometimes more, you're not going to get good quality readout unless those items are kind of all on the same level playing field. So I would encourage the audience to really scrutinize the items that they're including in their MaxDiff exercises. And the other thing, it's not always possible, but the shorter and more concise those statements can be, and the more written in consumer understandable language, the better off you're going to be. So we've used MaxDiff a lot. We've talked about segmentation quite a bit. We recently completed a segmentation, and it was a post hoc segmentation, versus a priori, if you remember your kind of research textbooks. But so we had attitudinal and behavioral questions in the questionnaire. We had life stage questions in the questionnaire. We had financial health questions, and as well as demographic questions and things like that. So anyway, on the back end, you have to have some algorithm to group those respondents into segments. Now, those segments, need to kind of satisfy some conditions. They need to be reachable segments. They need to be actionable segments. They need to be segments that will respond to your marketing messages. And they need to be sustainable, because it doesn't do good to go through one of these segmentation studies that can take you 3 months and put in all the time if it's fleeting. And there's reasons why that could be done. So anyway, you want to solve for a segmentation solutions that get you there. And again, it's a lot of kind of art or judgment and science mixed together. But some suppliers will just have a approach to their segmentation studies and throw out a k-mean segmentation to you and solution, or there's some other latent class or whatever. And actually we worked with Radius on ours, and we tried probably 5 or 6 different algorithms, segmentation algorithms, before we landed on the final one we selected, which we thought told the most coherent story. And my experience has been, and Mike can give his point of view, but some of those traditional clustering algorithms, I've just never found that much success with them. So we landed on one. It's non-negative matrix factorization, which we felt did a good job. And Mike can always provide a paper on that if you're interested and you're really into the algorithms and the technical of those. But it's kind of interesting because it really combines a factor analysis approach with kind of a clustering approach, kind of simultaneously. And I think it gets you into a good place. So conceptually, I like that. So anyway, there's that for segmentation. And on the back end, keep in mind, for segmentation to be actionable, you really need a good solid typing tool, and that's going to require advanced analytics as well. And so, in our case, we used a random forest typing algorithm coupled with a backup discriminant analysis algorithm. Finally, not to make this section too long, but we use advanced analytics a lot in our brand tracking program. And just briefly, for example, we'll use it to look at key driver analysis, for example. And so that again gets at things like, what's the best approach to do that? Regression, correlation, etc. But with high multicollinearity, we landed, and we had a lot of binary variables as well. And so we landed on Bayes analysis, which is probability-based approach, which works well with binary data and intercorrelated data. And that's what we're using for our key drivers analysis. And then one final thing on the brand tracker is we've used advanced analytics as well to look at kind of the brand structure, brand attribute structure. So again, if we've got 15 or 20 or 25 brand attributes, how do those all interrelate with one another? And how do they work to drive, or how are they related to driving a key dependent variable like brand consideration? And so, you could do that with an SE, structural equation modeling approach, for example, but that kind of requires some a priori imposition of theory on that, which I don't like. So we tried Bayesian labs approach, which some of you may have heard of. I was hopeful and optimistic that might work quite well, because I like kind of that conceptually, but it ended up that didn't tell the greatest story. So we ended up using a graphical lasso approach, which is a combination of kind of factor analysis and then lasso regression to look at that brand structure analysis. So that'll give you.
What I'm hearing is it might take multiple approaches, and it's about working through to find what delivers the best solution for you.
That's absolutely correct, and Mike can speak to that. But yeah, you just and if you just go in with one canned approach, you're not doing a thorough job.
And let me take it a little further, Jay. You mentioned, and I'm glad to hear that you do turn to Radius for these needs some of the time, maybe more than some. But in any case, how did you land on Radius or any of your other vendors? What are some of the considerations, the important factors to be thinking about when choosing a partner to provide advanced analytics?
Yeah, well, you first got to, I'd encourage you to work with some different suppliers and find one that you develop a trust and confidence in, and a strong partnership working relationship, number one. But you've got to kind of vet out your partner based on technical competency, number one. And also be kind of vet them out that they have access to a range of tools to bring to the table. And that's not only an understanding of different approaches, but the associated software to execute those techniques. and that. And then, as we spoke at the outset, you want a partner that's going to not be concerned about spending time with you and kind of logging that as hours on the project and coming back and saying, hey, we got 10 hours of consultation here, so we got to up the charge on this project and that. Now, obviously, if you get out of scope with something, then it's perfectly, expected that a supplier's, time is money and all that, or scope is money. But you got to find a supplier that's willing to work with you to spend the time to explain those things. And again, you're going to get approached, folks in the audience. You get approached every day with suppliers trying to sell you the latest and greatest. And I would be a hard sell. I would probe and clarify on all that stuff, and before you go off and bite on something like that.
Great. Mike, what would you add to this list in terms of recommendations that you might make to folks who are considering including advanced analytics in their next study? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah. So, we're really always cautious when we're recommending advanced analytics, because we really do want to ensure that that tool, technique, approach that we're going to use is really going to give us additional value or insights beyond just simply asking, more straightforward questions. So we don't want to include these types of techniques or approaches simply to include them. Because, as I talked about before, anytime you include some sort of advanced analytics, it's probably going to require larger sample size, additional cost, additional timeline. So we really do take kind of a critical eye when we're recommending to make sure that we're going to get the value from the technique that we want to.
And anything additional to add for those folks who may be listening who haven't really ever considered advanced analytics? It's maybe not on their radar, but maybe they should be thinking about it.
Yeah, and I definitely think that there's just huge value in including advanced analytics in a study. But if you've not used advanced analytics or you've not used a particular technique, when you're working with a vendor, just as Jay was saying, take the time and have that vendor explain the approach to you, explain the benefits that it's going to provide in the study. What are you really going to get out of that technique? And then also talk to you about the drawbacks, because there's always kind of consequences to including these types of techniques.
Got it. Excellent. Folks, we've been talking for a bit of time already. It always goes by fast in qualitative research. But just one last question as we do begin to wrap up our time together. At the end of the day, what is the number one reason why one might want to consider including advanced analytics in their research? Really just kind of summarize what we've heard today. Jay, if you would get us started summarizing, and then Mike, go ahead and add.
Yeah. I think, I'll repeat myself a little bit here, but it's basically driven by the need to look for those underlying relationships and dig deeper into the data, and to solve for a research question that is just not surfacing at face value from the descriptive statistics. So, I mean, that sounds pretty kind of lame maybe, but that's why you would do it. And, we go to a lot of trouble. I mean, field costs are going up all the time, and particularly for us, because we're membership-based organization and the incidence of our target audiences are pretty low out there. So our field costs are quite high, and it takes us a lot of time and money to collect the data. And so we need to make sure we're making the most use of that data. And advanced analytics, offers the opportunity at least to leverage that data in ways that maybe didn't immediately come to mind, or to dig deeper into those insights. And then finally, I mean, you're delivering, at the end of the road, the end of the road is not the research itself, but it's how do those research insights impact and help and support marketing strategy and tactics, or business strategy and tactics. So our ultimate, the calling we have is to deliver the insights that, circling back to the end, are going to bring value and support, those decisions that have to be made.
Got it. Mike, last
Yeah.
couple words, and then we'll turn it over to Paul for some questions.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with Jay. I mean, not to reiterate what he said, but really advanced analytics allows us to maximize the value that we get out of data, and then in turn, the insights that we're able to provide to our clients based on that data. So, it's just a collection of very powerful tools that really add a lot of value to research.
Fantastic. And it looks like we have some questions coming in. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for your participation and your time. I am going to open this back up to Paul, who can start to share with you some of the questions we've received. Hi, Paul.
Oh, Paul, you're on mute or something.
Hi, folks. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I've been monitoring the questions. We've got a lot of questions here for you guys, so I'm going to jump straight in. Jay, there's one I think for you in particular. You'd mentioned having shorter statements, either in choice studies or as attributes, or using consumer language. One of the questions was, do you advocate for using qualitative to help produce those before you get into quant? Is that something you guys consider at USAA?
Yeah, we've done that before, and that, Paul, more often than not, we're using the qualitative to kind of come up with the statements, to begin with, not to get the whether it's a focus group or discussion board or whatever format you're using, to kind of parse the language and that. Although we have, I mean, what's the best way to express this and all that, and then you can glean from that maybe ways to pare down the wording. But this may not be that helpful to the questioner, but it basically is incumbent upon, I think the burden more falls on, the brand team, you as a researcher working with your internal stakeholders to say, okay, well, I know this is kind of the marketing speak and this is how we're articulating it, but you've got a 3 or 4 sentence, reason to believe here, and we've got to shorten that down. So how can we communicate the essence of this message or reason to believe, but get rid of the extraneous words and superfluous words and just shorten it. And also push back and say, hey, assume you don't know anything about banking, Mr. Stakeholder, Mrs. Stakeholder. If you were to read this statement, would you understand what it means? And almost always I get, well, no, honestly, I would not. So, well, that's the point. We're serving this up to respondents, so we've got to tweak this language so they're going to understand it.
Got it. I do have another one for you here. This one's from Tim. Jay, you said a segmentation should be reachable and sustainable. And Tim says, is there anything else other than those 2 attributes that you recommend for any segmentation to make sure that it ticks off that box?
Yeah, Tim, you said Tim is.
Tim.
Yeah, Tim. Yeah, it needs to be okay. Yeah, so reachable meaning you can you can identify who these people are, and that's why it gets to be tough. Because if you're doing an attitude and behavioral segmentation, it's going to tell you attitudes and behaviors, but unfortunately, it's not going to tell you a lot about who they are. So you got to roll in demographics. And so there's always a trade-off between, the variables you're throwing into your model, but you almost have to throw in some demographics because when it comes to targeting, you've got to kind of, targeting is based, you can target to some extent on attitudes and behaviors, but you got to have some other variables to try to target. So that's reachable. And the typing tool that I mentioned also comes into typing. So I don't know that he asked about reachable, but I wanted to further explain that. But so you got reachable, sustainable, but they got to be actionable. And what I mean from that is whatever attitudes and behaviors and the value proposition and messaging associated, what's going to resonate with those segments has to be able to be delivered by the business. And so if, you know, if a particular segment is saying, you know, in effect, I want this, but you know, it's not in the cards for your business to be able to deliver on that, then it doesn't mean you throw that segment out, but it means that segment is clearly probably not going to be one of your priority segments in that. And the last one I think I mentioned was you have to have segments that are differentiated enough that the whole idea of segmentation from a marketing standpoint is that they're going to respond relatively better to customized messaging that's targeted to, you know, those segments respectively. So you need to make sure that the messaging you're going to deliver, they're going to be receptive to that, and that's kind of the relevance or the receptivity piece of it. I hope I answered that.
No, I think that answered that pretty fully. Mike, anything that you would want to add to that?
Yeah, just one thing. So the other dimension I would say with segmentation is measurable. And essentially what I mean by that is we want to make sure that when we come up with segments, that those segments are not too large, so they don't comprise, say, 50% of the market, because if you have a segment that's 50% of the market, it probably needs to be broken apart. So it's just simply too large. Nor do you want segments that are so small that they're really not actionable. You know, you don't want a segment that's only 5% of the market, because unless there's something just incredibly unique or valuable about that segment, they're not sufficiently large enough to justify going after. So you want sort of a sweet spot. So you really need to, you know, be careful when you're extracting segments and look at those segment sizes.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, you know, not to, you got another question, Paul, or do we want to talk?
No, I think there are other questions.
Not to beat segmentation to death, but I mean, obviously, if you got, you know, a market of 100, just hypothetically, you know, the most minute segmentation would be 100 people, because we're all unique. And, you know, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose of segmentation. So if you kind of extrapolate that to a market of, you know, 40 million or whatever your target market is, you know, there's kind of a fine line between how many segments, back to Mike's point. And so that's where that kind of art and science, or judgment and science, is mixed together. Yeah, because no segment, once you get beyond a segment of one, no segment is truly 100% homogeneous. So you've got a segment, and the idea is they're more homogeneous within and heterogeneous among. And so it's kind of a probability game. So we've got this segment, they tend to be different, you know, enough different from these other segments that they have unique needs. And we're gonna, you know, not every single one of them are we gonna hit spot on, but the lion's share of that segment is gonna respond to this message that, you know, showed up in the segmentation results.
Understood completely. It can't be 100%, but you want to get as close to that as you possibly can.
Right.
That's all we have time for today, folks. Thanks for all your questions on the screen. My thanks also to Barry for moderating, for Mike, for you, and Jay, particularly for you, to be involved in this. This was our third webinar of the year. We'll do one more in Q4 when we'll get together, and we'll send out some introductions and invites to you all then. So thanks for joining this one, and look for the next one that we put on. Thank you.
Okay, everybody take care.
Thanks all.
Yeah,
Thank
bye.
you.